So it's Monday morning, and that means we're going to ponder another question of Jesus. The question comes from Matthew chapter 7, the last chapter of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus has gathered around him a crowd. He's teaching them. Some were disciples, some were not. And in chapter 7, verse 2, he says this. Here's the question. Why do you notice the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own? It's kind of an amusing picture when you picture that. But that's the case of a lot of people who, because of our nature, we find it easier to see faults in someone else than faults in ourselves. The verse just before this question is the verse, "Judge not that you be not judged," and some have taken that out of context to suggest that we should never judge people, and that's just not true. Jesus is not teaching here that we shouldn't ever judge. He's saying that hypocrites should never, ever judge until they've taken the log out of their own eye. In his letter, James, in the first chapter, he talks about the same thing. He talks about hypocrisy. And he talks about the man who is a hearer of the word, but not a doer. And he says that man is like, he's like a man who sees his face in a mirror. The mirror, of course, is the word of God. He sees himself in it. And then he walks away forgetting what he saw. And so the answer to the problem of hypocrisy is staying in the Word of God, being diligent to do the Word of God, to engage in self-criticism, self-examination, so that you're able to see in yourself the things that need to change, the sins that need to be confessed, the behaviors that need to be replaced with godly behaviors. At the end of the passage in Matthew 7, Jesus says, "Take the log out of your own eyes, you hypocrites, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eyes." So there's a place for judging, for exhorting and encouraging others to get back on track with the Lord and to get past sins in their lives, but only after we've dealt with the sins in our own lives. So you've heard people say perhaps that the church is full of hypocrites, and they're right to a degree. There are hypocrites inside and outside of the church because it's just easier for us to see the faults of others. There may have been a time when you've been sitting in a service listening to a sermon and you hear something in the sermon and you think, that's exactly what that person needs to hear. And you haven't applied it to yourself, which of course is what we should be doing when we listen to a sermon or we listen to a teaching. But the answer to the problem of hypocrisy is being in the Word of God, not being like the man who sees his face in the mirror of the Word and then walks away, but rather is diligent to do what the Lord tells us to do, to spend time in self-examination, self-criticism, so that we can remove those logs and allow us to see others more clearly. So, again, this Wednesday, we're going to be having a discussion online about Sunday's sermon, yesterday's sermon on work. And so I hope you'll be there for that. Everybody will get an invite to that. Have a wonderful Monday. God bless.